Now, I warned you to be watching for a green awesome oscillator bar with Bitcoin. We're getting it. We have it here. Bitcoin futures is completing the divergence. Again, we're bouncing with Bitcoin futures off the 200 period moving average, bouncing off the 200 period moving average, getting this divergence, and the Bitcoin price has rallied back up to the 200, and now it's going to try to get a decisive push above that level. The S&P, meanwhile, is rallying back up to the 200 as I predicted late last week. I said it was going to rally up to the 200 like Bitcoin. We're seeing that happen today. Again, I expect that we're going to see the Fed stop quantitative tightening. They're going to announce a stop of the quantitative tightening that'll probably stop later in March or on into April somewhere, but they'll likely announce that. The markets will go, oh, gee, stopping quantitative tightening. They're going to do QE. They're going to and the market's going to begin to price that in. And again, the Fed is going to later do QE, but it's going to be for the wrong reasons. They're going to panic. They're going to do emergency cuts. And later on, we're going to move into this bear market. And the Fed, they'll first panic with the emergency cuts, and later they'll bring back QE. But this time, we're going to have a bear market with the stock market, and Bitcoin is going to end up having a wrecking ball taken to it. I am bullish. I believe Bitcoin has now bottomed, and it's going to go to new all-time highs, but then I think it's going to top. You get these people with unrealistic expectations, and when we get up there, they're going to not believe it's a top. They didn't believe it was a top back over here when I called the December top, back over here when I called the January top, again with these peaks at the trend line of resistance. We're building momentum, as I keep saying, to clear that trend line that we turned off of right there. And we're bouncing up the trend line from the 2023 low. These important trend lines I keep talking about. And that's why I'm so bullish here, because the herd got very bearish. The herd was bullish up here, so we want to be bearish, But again, absolutely unrealistic calls for Bitcoin. And when we get up there, the unrealistic calls are going to just be crazier and crazier. Bitcoin's probably going to move to 135, maybe 145,000. A little bit higher, a little bit lower in that range. If we rally quickly, it'll be lower. If we take our time rallying, maybe it'll be a little higher. A number's not my target. A trend line's my target. A date is not my target. A trend line is my target. I think Bitcoin has now completed wave 4. We're now starting wave 5. When we get up there, and when we get to the trend line that I'm talking about, I'm going to be flipping the trade. I mean, this is the bullish opportunities right here, but I'm going to flip the trade when we get up there, take profits, and go back to short. I'm a trader, okay? I really don't care which way Bitcoin goes. I play the long side, I play the short side. Back and forth, back and forth. We're going to go higher, and then I think Bitcoin's going to top out, but I think it's going to have an explosive move, maybe around 70, 75, 85% higher if we go up into this 145,000 area or something like that, 135,000. The S&P is going to surge by 15 to 20%. That's what happens at blow-off tops. A sell-off to make it look like it's bigger than it really is. Had we surged 70 or 80, 70, 75, 80% from the highs, we would go much higher. But the sell-off, it's going to look more bigger, but we've had this pullback of 30% or so to complete the wave 4. So again, going to be looking for the cloud to flip back above the 20, getting these bars right here. Again, the risk is if Bitcoin does go down and take out this low, you got key support at 74,000. You've got the Bitcoin average price at that same area. I guess is Bitcoin's bottom with the divergence, but we need to, and we're now seeing, as I talked about my last update, where we saw the bottoming signals. At the moment, Bitcoin is up 2.34% on Sunday. Bitcoin, which momentum flipped. Remember my last update, I told you momentum was flipping. We had the bottoming signals at the bottom. The momentum flipped over the weekend, and now we're going to see the trend signals begin to change if we can clear the 200, which we're trying to do right now, in the 20 period just directly overhead. The Sunday session, we were down 2.12%, pulling back off of the 200 a little bit there after getting above it, and now we're back up above the 200, 2.37% higher, directly below that 20-period moving average. You're going to see a surge above that here this week. We'll likely see a Fed rally. Again, I think the Fed will quantitative tightening, and the market will celebrate that. comes QE, and the Fed has our back. We're not going to have a recession. There's nothing to worry about. And the Fed is going to likely try to reassure markets, to calm markets. It's a post-Fed rally. Maybe it happens the 2 days after the Fed. Maybe it happens the day with the Fed. We'll see what happens. But Bitcoin, and here it could happen ahead of the Fed and with the Fed. But I do believe that we're going to see this big surge this week, as I've been warning. Again, because I believe we're in a bottoming process. And again, the herd has been so bearish down here at these lows. I mean, they have just been in the dumps, man. I mean, they are so down, so upset. And again, they get very bearish at bottoms. They get very bullish at tops. And again, when I call these tops, they were extremely bullish. And again, now they're very, very bearish. When we start to get this rally, they're going to be slapping each other on the back, saying, see, we shouldn't have been so bearish. And a lot of them sold at the bottom, and they panic sell. And again, the opportunity, presents itself in the herd. They like to buy tops and sell bottoms. That's what they do. Okay. Again, so the opportunity was here surrounding the 200 period moving average at the rising trend line of support. The selling opportunity was up here. And again, not a recommendation to buy or sell Bitcoin. I'm just telling you, again, my strategy and the trend lines I'm watching, we turned off major trend lines in the weekly here. We're bouncing off a major trend line right here. I think you're going to get the surge back up to the resistance zone, as I've been talking about. Again, because Bitcoin takes its time, people go, oh, it's not going to happen. And you're going to go back up to the upper channel, probably stall around the 50 period in the resistance zone here, get some kind of pullback, and then build momentum and plow on through this to clear the 100,000 area. You need to clear this resistance up in here to clear 100,000 and the 99,000 area. That's what needs to happen. You need to clear the resistance to go challenge 109,000. I think we'll move above that. But again, I have a realistic target. I have a trend line as a target. I think we're in the final fifth wave. When we get there, again, herd's going to do what they always do. Bitcoin's going to 250,000, 500,000. Don't sell your Bitcoin. It's going to start selling off, and it's going to get about a 50% drop. This was about a 30% drop. It's going to get a 50% drop to kick off the bear market. It's likely going to end up dropping 80 or 90% by the time it's done. I'm bullish. We're going higher, but then we're going to top, and the herd is going to go, talking about all these crazy targets and say, the whales are doing this. They're doing this just because they want your Bitcoin. Don't sell it. And I mean, they did that at the 2021 time. They do it every time. That's all they know how to do. I'm just telling you, you're going to have very bullish sentiment as we blow past this level, and they're going to be excited and thrilled. Bitcoin's likely going to go up there and top in a 5-leg push higher, and that could take, if it happens fast, it could take 6-7 weeks, really fast, going maybe to the end of April. If it takes a few months, it might go into the late spring on into summer, May, June, July. But you're going to see over the next several weeks, up to a couple of months, you're going to see this blow-off top complete. You're going to see a top. Profit taking will happen up at the top. The professional money will take the profits. I'm going to sell into the rally at my trend line, and then we're going to get a very quick, fast drop because recession is coming. And that's the herd doesn't believe that a recession is going to happen. Maybe Powell this week, which is telling us, he told us in December, it's clear we've avoided a recession. That's his exact words. And again, maybe he tries to reassure markets. You're going to get the end of quantitative tightening, and I think that's going to give us rally. And maybe we even get the Fed penciling in another rate cut or two. Also, the Fed is going to give the GDP economic projections. And, we have this negative GDP. It was still negative. It was revised a little bit better today. It's like negative 2.1%, was down to negative 2.8%. First quarter GDP, the Atlanta Fed expectations. Fed will come out and say, "Oh no, the year, by the end of the year, we're going to have positive GDP," and so the market could just dismiss that or shrug it off, and then we'll get that number at the end of April, the first quarter GDP. The quarter ends in March, so just some important things. We're rallying up right now. We're back above the 10. At the moment, we're back above the 200. We'll see if we can clear that 20 period moving average and move to the resistance zone. I warned you at the bottom, the bullish bottoming signals were forming. Okay, the bullish bottoming signals were forming, and they they allowed a bullish divergence to form with the previous low, which also got bullish signals. I told you back when we formed this low, I told you I thought that was a bottom, but I told you we could still see on the RSI and momentum and other signals have it roll back over if we failed at the 20-period moving average. I ended up failing at the 20 period. That's why I watched the 20 period. And we rolled back over and we got a divergence and we went slightly lower. But directly below, you have Bitcoin's average price. You have horizontal support. This low's probably going to hold. Okay, and we've rallied up to the 20. It failed. We came down here. Now we've rallied back up to the 200-period moving average, trying to previously bounce off the 200-period. We dropped below it, and now we're at it. I think you're going to surge. Told you we were going to get these bottoming signals. That needed to be followed by momentum turning bullish. That happened on Sunday. If you missed the video, I talked about the momentum turning back to bullish on Saturday and Sunday. The arrow showed up Saturday. Momentum flipped on Sunday. I talked about this in my last update. Now we're getting the price of Bitcoin attempting to get it back above the 200. If we can surge above it, we need to flip the trend signals back to bullish. If the momentum can remain bullish, we can go and flip the trending signals back to bullish, and then Bitcoin can rise back up and challenge the resistance zone, challenge the high over here, challenge the declining trend line, as I've talked about, the upper boundary of the bull flag. The bull flag is right into the trend line, the rising trend line on the weekly chart from the 2023 low. So bullish signals followed by momentum now flipping back to bullish, and not all of momentum has flipped back to bullish. We need to see that bullish reversal of conditions with Bitcoin futures, and that'd be by getting back above the 10 period and surging above the 200 here. But we're starting to see it here with the momentum line, and we'll see if that now gives us a big surge above the 200 in the next couple of days. And again, I think you'll likely see a Fed rally this week, or a post-Fed rally, maybe a delayed reaction to it later in the week. We'll be watching. Get good tariff news. Do we see Europe come to the negotiating table? These are the things I've been talking about. Canada's already at the negotiating table. You know, Bitcoin and the market shrugging the tariffs off right now. That could be the case. That's what happened in 2018. And if we don't see negotiations happen, which we very well could, in the not too distant future, but we could see, again, the market just shrug it off. In 2018, you had volatility surrounding tariffs, but then the market shrugged it off. Eventually, it went to new highs. I think Bitcoin will. But again, could we get good tariff news? I think it's very possible. Could Europe come to the negotiating table? I really think that is likely. We had those bottoming signals form as a divergence was forming on indicator after indicator. There's so many indicators with divergences, I don't have time to show them all to you, but we have these divergences going on. Because what we're going to be watching is, do we get oscillators in positive territory and start getting above the 20 period and start flipping the signals back to bullish? Again, bottoming signals. Now momentum flips back to bullish. Here it is on the impulse line. Bullish divergence with momentum. Now it's got to go into positive territory, but we're seeing all these bullish divergences as we went back down and tested this low, but we couldn't close below it. I think Bitcoin's likely bottomed here. We'll see if the S&P does this. The S&P is rallying towards its 200. It may just blow past it as it did in 2000 and 2007 in the topping processes that formed there, but Bitcoin came back and tested it. Stock market's been following Bitcoin, so we'll be watching to see what happens. Now we need to see the bars turn back to bullish, and we need to flip trend signals back to bullish. So again, the ribbon and the cloud, and get back above this line right here represents a short-term trend. Back above the 100 period moving average. So again, the bullish signals followed now by momentum trying to turn, but we need to see more momentum signals turn, and then the trend signals begin to turn. And I think you'll likely see that this week as this bullish divergence begins to play out and get oscillators back into positive territory. Again, I've been warning you about these bottoming signals that have been forming with Bitcoin, but we need to see that flip the trend. The bars here I programmed them to reflect the trend, and they're still red. So we got to get this surge above the 200 period. We got to start seeing the red go away and green to come back. But yeah, I got another bottoming signal here. Again, looks like a bullish divergence, like we had the bearish divergence up here that marked the top. It couldn't flip the trend back to bearish here. but then it formed a divergence with indicators and it flipped it over here. Couldn't flip the trend back to bullish here, even though we got a bottoming signal like we had the bearish one over here. But then over here, does that have now the ability to flip the trend back to bullish? I think that's likely going to be the case. Great signal there at the top as well. So we've had these bottoming signals. Now we're getting momentum signals trying to shift. Some of them are shifting already. Some of them aren't quite there yet. And then the next step is to shift the trend signals back to bullish, flipping all of this right here back to green. And when we start surging, you know, you got a level of resistance around the 88,000 area. And if we get back above that, then you go back up into the low 90 range right here, 93, 94,000, 95,000, that area in there, and the declining trend line, which is the upper boundary of the bear flag. So we're likely headed towards this trend line, towards this resistance zone for a test. And then if we do pull back there or break above it and pull back, if you break above it, you get a back test. If you stall there, then you've got the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders pattern if we exclude the shadow over here. So we'll be watching to see if that plays out, something like that. And going back to the 200, it can play out that way. Bitcoin forms a lot of head and shoulder patterns, inverse head and shoulders and head and shoulder tops. It does it quite a bit. Whoops, sorry about that. I had to take a call. The price of Bitcoin at the 200 period, we're rallying back up as these bullish divergences are forming all over there. I have so many indicators that are forming bullish divergences. It'd take a long time just to sit there and go through them. But again, we're likely going to see them go into positive territory and get back here, back into the positive portion of the cloud and go back up and test the resistance zone. Likely see the bars flip back to green, representing the trend that again, currently the trend is down. The bars are red. We'll see if they can flip back. And these bullish divergences are likely going to cause that to happen. Bitcoin's bottomed. I think we're going to now surge above the 200. The S&P is rallying towards it, as I've been warning. And Bitcoin getting above the 200, and then we're going to go challenge these resistance levels. Trying to build momentum to get back above 100,000. Bitcoin's going to go make new highs. Get a big rally. I'm expecting, 70, 75, 85% rally. 135,000, 145,000. And Bitcoin's going to top out. And people are not going to believe it's a top when we get there. It's a problem with most people in crypto. They have unrealistic expectations. But here, we got a surge above that 200 period moving average. We've got to get the ribbon going back to bullish. Momentum there going back to bullish. And then we got to be able to flip the trend. So again, got to be able to clear this area. We'll probably pull up to this area, and then we'll see what happens at the trend line of resistance. Do we clear it and then back test it, or do we pull back at it? We'll be watching. But bullish divergence is everywhere on my indicators, marking that recent low. Now, it's still possible if we get rejection around the 200, we still test this low. But again, talked about the support zone. I think the support zone is likely going to hold. I think you're going to try to blast through this area. But again, we need to be able to flip the signals from bearish back to bullish. Then intraday, we'll need to see these signals begin to turn bullish. We've got red bars. We've got red indicators. We need to see a red background. We need to see it flip back to green. Over here, it tried, and it failed, and it went back to red. Here it did, and it didn't last very long, and it tried to turn down, and it failed. And then it had a legitimate move here. Here we need to see things all flip back to bullish, and that's getting above the 87 and 88,000 area, and then going back and testing the 93, 94, 95,000 area of resistance. That's what needs to happen. So we got to be able to clear this area. So the bullish signals that we had, the bottoming signals, we're now seeing momentum. Now we've got to flip the trend into a bullish phase. Again, Bitcoin intraday signals have been bearish. They need to flip back to bullish. We need to see the red turn back to green bars. And then the line needs to turn back to blue. Okay, and again, when that happens, you're going to see Bitcoin surging higher. This is about to happen. In my opinion, I think we've bottomed. Still may test a low, but I think Bitcoin has bottomed if it can surge above the 200 period moving average. Trying to inch above it right now. today's trading session. I think we're going to get a rally this week, and I think it's going to mark a bottom. I've talked about the bullish inverse head and shoulders, and now we've got this triangle, and that's trying to break out right now. We're trying to flip the bars back to green here on the 4-hour chart. Again, we took out the support zone low, but we couldn't close below it, and you got these bottoming tails. And again, I talked about how buyers were hovering at these lows, and the low here and the low over here, these levels. This is where the buyers have been coming in, and then now even here with this pullback that we had. So again, I think we're building momentum. I think we pull back to build momentum to now start surging above that 200 period moving average, and we're trying to inch above it right now as we are in the Monday trading session. See if we close above it. Right now, again, we were up 2.64% a little bit ago. Now we're up just over 2%. Again, you got to get above that 20 period moving average. You got to close here above the 200. Yesterday, we closed below it. We got to close above it. You got to close above the 10 and get back above the 200 to be able to clear that 20 period moving average. But you got this bull flag going right into the rising trend line that I've talked about. In the daily time frame, we got to get things back to green, back to bullish. So I'll be watching to see if we can do that by surging above the 200 period moving average and trying to move back towards the resistance zone. But the moment we start seeing everything flipping back to green, the bars reflecting the trend, that's going to tell us, hey, the trending signals are now starting to change. And that's going to be extremely bullish for Bitcoin. If we start clearing that 200 period, decisively clearing it, again, I think IBIT's going to come back and fill the gap right here, 49.5, and up here, 53.5. But you got, again, a possible inverse head and shoulders that might try to set up surrounding that as we go back and test the 200. This is a 60-minute chart of IBIT. Again, the divergences are playing out very nicely, just as they did on the Bitcoin 4-hour chart. But again, we need to be able to clear the 200 period. We need to be able to clear the trend line here in the 60-minute time frame. And the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin needs to do the same thing. So I think you're coming back up to fill these gaps. Might be more consolidation. Possibly an inverse head and shoulders pattern might set up here. But again, I do believe that Bitcoin has likely bottomed, but you might form, at the trend line of resistance, you might come up here and stall up the trend line of resistance and do something like that right there. So we'll see if we get an inverse head and shoulders or if it's a slanted pattern or horizontal pattern. But watch that 200 period moving average we'll be looking at. Or do we plow on through it and then back test? That's the other possibility. Bitcoin's trying to bounce off the 50-week moving average. You got the 50 simple moving average and the 50 EMA. They're at the same level of this trend line from the 2023 low. And again, if we bounce off of that, you're likely going back above these highs in all likelihood to complete the final fifth wave. And if you get back above the 50 on the RSI and bounce off the 50 here, you'll reaffirm the bullish 50-50 signal. And if you get back above the 20-week moving average not seen here, then again, you'll reaffirm a bullish 2050 signal. If that RSI can get back into the positive region as it did at these other times, I think that's likely going to be the case. The daily chart, Bitcoin's again formed a bullish divergence pushing into that trend line. You got horizontal support. You're just below the 200. Now we're trying to claw our way to see if we can get back above it, but you've got the bullish divergence here. The MACD is firmed up and turned bullish, forming a Class B diversion. So again, you're likely going to try to get an attempted rebound. You have a bull flag pushing into the rising trend line, pushing into the 200, which we've taken out, and now we're trying to get back above and hitting that 50-week moving average. And we have these bullish divergences in the 4-hour time frame on Bitcoin. So again, I think you're going to see an attempt to go up and hit the 200 period to test the resistance zone and test the trend line, either plow on through it and back test it or stall at it and pull back, and we'll see how it plays out. And Bitcoin's bouncing off that 2023 trend line. You still have this larger channel. Again, we turned off these trend lines right here, the trend line right here from this low right here. We turned off of it at the December high, at the January high. I talked about that at the time. Now we're hitting that 2023 trend line, and we're trying to bounce off of it right there. So again, these trend lines have been marking the tops and the bottoms. And again, this is where we bounced over here at the 49,000 and 52,000 lows over here. So again, we're likely headed to try to clear this trend line and get back up into the upper channel of this larger blue channel. And that's probably going to take Bitcoin to the 135 to 145,000 area. I think you'll see the RSI come back up. And end up forming a massive bullish divergence, or bearish divergence, right here at this area. And I think when we come up to this trend line right here, you're likely going to be completing that level. And I think it's going to be a breathtaking rise to suck everybody in, lull everybody into a false sense of security, and then you're going to get the mother of all rug pulls taking place. And again, the big money, the black rocks of the world, have been selling into the rally, and now they're buying back. And they're going to run it back up, and they're going to do another rug pull. And again, the herd is going to be blindsided by it. But again, that's what the big money is doing. That's why I'm telling you, up here, Bitcoin's going to top out.